We tested in the last 2 weeks of Q1 ungating content, and we saw that drop down to about $11 to get somebody to engage with an ungated content asset. And we got the cost, just the number of engagements we got in 2 weeks was so much, I can't remember the exact percentages, but it was probably 40 or 50% of what we got in that entire rest of the quarter using a gated model, because we were stopping people from engaging with the content.
Hello and welcome to Marketing in the Raw. Deanna, my friend, how goes it today?
It's going.
It's going? That was just, it's going, huh? That sounds like a mother of a little kid. Is the going related at all to having a now, was he now 2-year-old?
He's two. And yeah, he's going all the time. In every sense of the word, he's going. And I'm just thankful he doesn't know how to operate doors yet. Feeling very thankful about that. My door's closed and it will remain that way.
He doesn't know how to operate doors yet. How did you keep that technological advancement out of his hands?
You know, our doors are mostly knobs. The front door has like the crank handle thing, and that he's caught on to, so we just keep it locked. But yeah, we have recently stopped using any sort of baby gates in the house to keep him contained. And so it's wildly unhinged around here.
Yeah, any parents out there can probably relate to those different phases. I remember when my son turned 2 and, people were like, oh, he's about to hit the terrible twos. And I don't know why in my brain I was thinking somehow the terrible twos go away 12 months after, they turn 2 and they turn 3. Right. And suddenly it's terrible twos to terrific 3s and there's nothing at all. And it's like, no. Terrible twos, like, keep going until he's like 6 or,
18.
However, 18, exactly. Yeah. So how many gates did you have around the house?
That felt a little judgy. No, we had 2. There were just a couple of strategic spots that either to keep him and the dog separated every once in a while, just for the dog's sanity, and then keep him out of the kitchen when we're cooking. So yeah, no, it is now Noah's house. It's Noah's Ark over here, and he's in charge. He's doing whatever he wants.
Well, I was just thinking, just wait until your dog learns how to operate doors. Then that's a whole nother story, right?
Oh, she'd be out of here. Shoot to say, I'm out.
Has the dog hasn't learned how to use the lever handle on the front door?
Bless her heart. She's in retirement. Poor thing. She's 15. And we decided to bring a baby around on her 13th year. So she's very much not thrilled.
Oh, so you may end up seeing her just open the door with a, what is it? A stick and a little like blanket filled with all her belongings. She's like, peace out, Noah. I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this stuff anymore. Well, yeah. Speaking of like gates and gated things, it reminds me of like the experience marketers have when they're trying to decide like to gate or not to gate on their website, to like let people run free or to put these like barriers and gates up to, content or access to things. And the funny thing is it's very, very similar where like Noah's like, just let me have at everything. And it's the same, like the gates don't really serve the customers. They're completely in order to serve the marketers, the business, the folks that want to measure this stuff, right?
No, very true. Yes. That is an age-old question. Do you let your people that are visiting your site have all the access to all of your amazing assets so they understand how incredible you are, they can learn, they can get value out of it without having to share any information? Or do you latch onto that lead and run with it?
Well, it's funny that you say latch onto that lead, because oftentimes for some businesses, just knowing that there's a breathing human being with a name and an email is enough for them to literally latch on phone number, email, trying to contact them all of the time. And it doesn't mean that person has raised their hand and said, yo, I want to do business. they may not be ready at the moment. And then, the person, of course, is now even more fearful because we've been doing that so long from a marketing standpoint that they're like, if I do this, what else is going to happen that I didn't sign up for? If I share my information in order to get access to this, so it creates a situation where they're kind of weighing, is this really worth this? Is it worth not only giving my information, but is it worth the potential follow-up phone calls, dealing with somebody on the sales side who's sitting there trying to deal with objections and has a quota that they're trying to reach and all that? Or can you just let me check this information out so I can see if it's the right fit for me?
Right. That's challenging. And there has to be a level of trust in what the asset that you're providing. Is it incredibly valuable? And if it is, then give it to the people. Let them see how much value that you're able to provide. And that's only going to build trust and authority with your brand or whatever your business is offering. So yeah, that's a delicate dance, but you still want to know who's viewing. It's that curiosity.
Well, there's all kinds of cool ways of doing that these days as well. And you got to make sure you're doing it with, privacy and trust and security at the center of all of it. But that actually brings us to the conversation today that I am having with Chuck Moxley, because he explains actually how they did it at the company that he's at currently, Blue Triangle. And he shared kind of how they had to set the stage at the company, set the right expectations for going about doing this and testing this out, and then ultimately sort of the results that he found with it. So those of us who are like, to gate or not to gate, whether to let Noah run the house or not to run the house, that is the question. He digs into it. So Chuck, again, I said he's the CMO at Blue Triangle, and he has been in the marketing game for a long, long time. He is also the author of a book that he co-authored with Jamie Turner called An Audience of One: Drive Superior Results by Making the Radical Shift from Mass Marketing to One-to-One Marketing. And we talk about that as well during our conversation. But to gate or not to gate, that is just one thing that we talk about. I want you to check out the conversation with Chuck Moxley. Hey, Chuck, so glad that you were able to join me. Where am I speaking to you from today?
Hey, Adam, great to be here. I'm coming from Phoenix, Arizona.
So I know it's going to get hot for me over here in the Bay Area, but I should not complain. I'm sure how's it feeling over there for you today?
We're in September for perspective. If somebody's listening to this later, it's over 100 every day, the whole summer. We don't expect otherwise. So for us, it's just normal. So there's normal. 4 months of the year. It's really hot here. 8 months, it's fantastic. So just don't come in the summer.
I was going to say, you can keep them. You can keep all those four months. I run hot. So anytime I'm hot, I feel like I'm an extra 10, 15 degrees hotter. Everybody's like, why you look like a baked potato over there? What's going on? It's just me running hot. Well, Chuck, for the folks that don't know you, how did you get started in marketing? I'd love to get to know you a little bit more and let the folks listening get to know you a little bit more. Tell us about how you got into the crazy, crazy world of marketing.
Well, it's funny because I actually went to school for computer science, and I started out working on computers and testing software, and then I moved into training, but I always had an interest in marketing. I always had a love for it. In high school, I did a science fair project on the psychological impact of advertising. So I always had this interest. And so eventually I was working for a computer software company and got to move into marketing with them, and then became a product marketing manager, and then ended up going into the agency world, spent 10 years in agencies, working on a lot of consumer business, and then made a jump 6 companies ago to a B2B SaaS company. We didn't even call it that back then, but it was called something else at the time. But B2B SaaS marketing, and that's where I've been pretty much since. So I'm on my 6th one.
6th B2B SaaS company?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Well, they say, what is it? Once you go SaaS, you don't go back. I don't know.
You don't go back,
like
right?
That. Yeah. Well,
What do you feel has been like the key, maybe one or two milestones in your life that have like shaped your approach to how you do marketing at all these companies that you've been to?
Interesting question. I'll start with saying, and this was actually, I'll go all the way back. This is my dad that instilled in me this natural sense of curiosity. It's always something he had. And the best story on that I always tell is when we were in a movie theater when I was in high school. I remember this, and we're sitting there waiting for the movie to start. And he walked over to the wall, got up out of the seat, walked over to the wall, felt the wall, and then he sat back down. And we're like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, just curious how they make these theaters soundproof between them, So that was always his mind. And I think he instilled that in me. And where this relates back to today is I've been doing this for a long time, right? I've got a proven playbook. I've taken companies, from 2 million to 50 million. I know what works. What I know is it changes constantly. The way buyers buy, the way competitors compete, the way technology's there, the ability to get emails delivered and not, and all the things that was working, that have worked for us in the past. If I was running the same playbook I was running 5 years ago, it would not be successful today. So I think one of my key things, and this is what I instill in like younger people that are coming up in the industry, is always be curious, always be learning. I listen to 3, 4, 5 podcasts a weekend, marketing podcasts. I'm always studying. I'm always stealing. I'll put it that way. I'm always figuring out what are other people doing that's working. I'm going to go steal that idea. We're not doing that. Let me try that. And so I think that's one of the things that has helped me be successful. Even as the world has changed, I've had to adapt with it and I've had to really watch it. So that would be one. And you said two, let me think. I mean, the other thing I would say, again, if, for advice I would give somebody coming up through the industry is I was blessed to have some great mentors along the way, especially early in my career, that saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And they came alongside me, they coached me, they gave me guidance, and I learned from all that. And so I think that's been the other piece of, I don't know if I went a little too ethereal for you there.
That's your experience. And that's what I want to know about. It's revealing the layers of Chuck here. And now you talked about all the SaaS companies you've been a part of. Can you give me like a time frame, like when you're talking about your first versus currently, what kind of time frame is that?
Yeah. My first SaaS company was 1999, that big .com craziness. Wow. That's why I'm saying we were not, they didn't call it SaaS back then. They didn't know what to call it. Because remember, Salesforce was like a couple years old. And we were all struggling with, wait a minute, this isn't boxed software, or this isn't software that you install on machines. And we were the company that I was recruited to, and I actually moved from Kansas City. I was working for an agency in Kansas City. I got recruited to the Bay Area. So I moved to the Bay Area in the crazy.com days when you couldn't buy a house, and it was kind of insane.
You still can, it's all right.
It's okay, yeah, not unless you have a lot of money, right? Back then though, I'd walk in an open house, they go, just want you to know we already have 8 offers. It's like, you're bidding, and moving from Kansas City, it was kind of insane. I know you can relate because you're Bay Area, so you can relate to craziness. So anyway, when we were launching, again, we were having to explain to people it's not software that goes on machines. And we were HR and benefits software. So it was really just a whole paradigm. And I always give Salesforce credit. They nailed it with when they did the big red circle and the slash said software.
Yep.
So back then, by the way, I don't know if you were probably around in that time, they were called ASPs, application service providers. So we had to do a lot of education just on that topic. But that was my first B2B SaaS company, crazy.com days. And then, I went from there. So it was a lot of fun.
So what do you feel, because you talked about things being different all the time, and let's think about the most recent, let's say 5 or 6 years. What has stood out to you as some of the biggest changes that you've had to adapt to over the last 5, 6 years, maybe a little bit pre-pandemic? What did you notice that you and maybe even other marketers have had to adapt to, and you've been better positioned or prepared for it due to your experience? And like you said, your kind of philosophy of putting your hands on the walls and checking out how they're soundproofing between one side of the theater and the other.
Yeah, I think there are a few things. I think one of the things that people don't realize is how much the digital has evolved just in even the last 10 years. So, and the downside of that, what we're seeing with all the AI proliferation of AI tools out there is it gets easier and easier and easier for people to get out there and get into access to the buyers, and buyers are getting bombarded today. And so standing out has become much harder. If I think back to the, pre-pandemic era and stuff we did back then, there just weren't as many people clamoring for it. So emails got delivered. We implemented outreach.io, which is sales enablement and cadences or sequences and that whole concept. We implemented that back in, I want to say like 2017, 2018. We got huge deliverability, and we would run massive sequences and outbound with our outbound reps and stuff. Today, it's insane. The technology you have to put in place, where you have to get 20 domains and 2 email addresses per, and you can't send more than 30. I mean, it's a constant cat and mouse game. And then it's because everybody's coming at them. And so getting your message to stand out, I had tremendous success, and I've got some examples here of 3-dimensional direct mail. Well, back pre-pandemic, you could ship things to people's offices and they would be there. Today, that isn't always the case, right? So even using direct mail and that technology. And then the third thing would be gating. We were running gated playbooks. We were running lead gen campaigns back. I was having success with that even 2-3 years ago. And when I came to Blue Triangle, we had not done any marketing. So we launched our first marketing in January of last year. And we started out with a gated play in that first quarter, and we were getting real crap in terms of email addresses. Like, I would say 30-40% of the email addresses were bogus. People just wanted access, and we were paying high amounts, over $250 to get a lead. We tested in the last 2 weeks of Q1 ungating content, and we saw that drop down to about $11 to get somebody to engage with an ungated content asset. And we got the cost. I mean, just the number of engagements we got in 2 weeks was so much, I can't remember the exact percentages, but it was probably 40 or 50% of what we got in that entire rest of the quarter using a gated model, because we were stopping people from engaging with the content. So we ended up ungating all of our content last year, and it was a game changer for us. That I would never, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have gone, what the heck? No, gate everything. We want their email addresses. We want to put them on sequences. We want to do all this stuff. The world has changed. It's constant change.
How did you end up measuring the success of that in the end, or feel that you were doing the right thing, given that there was a portion of that process that a lot of marketers feel comfortable doing really for their own benefit and not for the benefit of, the customer? That part was removed. How did you feel you're moving in the right direction with it ultimately?
Well, we did have to change the way we thought about success and how we define success, and even what our funnel looked like, because, MQLs became kind of inconsequential at that point. We used to have MQLs, leads, et cetera. Now we don't have those leads. So we had to get software that allowed us to see who was coming to the website and what they were engaging with and how long they were doing that. So in the case of our ungated ebooks, we used a platform called Issue, which allows us to see how much content, how many pages. So they have to spend a certain amount of time on it with the asset. If they just hit it and bounce, we don't count it. So we have to see how long do they stay with the asset. That's how we're able to gauge an engagement. And then being able to see the companies come to our website allowed us to start to set benchmarks for how many can we get to come one time? How many can we get to come back multiple times, either multiple people visiting or the same person visiting multiple times? Then that's stage 2. Stage 3 is how many people are engaging with content that would indicate they're in market. They're looking at our platform pages. They go to pricing. They go to demo pages, things like that say they're in evaluating stage. And then for us, they don't become visible until they request a demo. So that first point of contact and the first time we get PII is the request a demo. So what we report back up to executives, in addition to we show that funnel and we set benchmarks at the beginning of the year, or goals at the beginning of the year. And interestingly, 6 months in, we had exceeded our goals on all the first 3 steps. The only one we hadn't hit yet was that 4th of evaluating. But what we really focus on then are when they give us their information, when they come in as an inbound demo request, and then we really report on pipeline. That's because in the end, I got to tell you, the CEOs just don't care. Even I have trouble getting them to care about pipeline. Wait a minute, it hasn't closed one revenue. I know, but we got a 7-month sales cycle. You got to give me some time, right? So, they really care about pipeline. They care about revenue. And that's what we ultimately want to optimize toward is the close one revenue. What's causing people to convert? And, I don't know, and this goes back to the way the world's changed. We use a platform called Hockey Stack. Is it okay if I'm using all these names?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm giving,
yeah.
Okay. I'm not trying to promote. I'm just saying there's certain platforms that do it, but they actually put out data because they work with a lot of companies. And when somebody gives us their email address, it lights up the whole way they got there. So we can see how many ads they were served, how many times they engaged with their social content when they came to our website, what pages they did, how many visits they made to our website, all that stuff, all that path. And so when we see even somebody who's not necessarily even in our ICP, that's going to be one of our bigger prospects, that those number of touches is typically more than 50 is what it took. And it may be 3, 4, 5 months. So it's a very long time to get them there. They put out data, and I'm looking up here because I happen to have it up on my screen. They actually identified it takes 723 impressions and 54 touch points on average. And that's across like 100 B2B SaaS companies. They're taking all the data on their platform to get to an MQL. To get to a close one opportunity, it's 81 touch points to get all the way to close one. So
that's like a great segue into essentially you removed friction and you had some trust that at least over a given amount of time that you were going to test this out. And I want to go back to that a little bit to understand kind of how you got buy-in and what it took to get buy-in, if anything, given that this isn't something that everybody just suddenly goes, sure, let's ungate everything so we don't have this data and do things kind of different than, like, to your point of what we're used to doing. But I know friction is a big word for you. I think you even, if I am not mistaken, you've written a book around it, correct?
Well, the book, which is pictured here, an audience of one, is more about one-to-one marketing, but we do have a podcast, which you can see in the blue cup, called The Frictionless Experience. Because Blue Triangle, that's what we're about. We're about removing friction from digital experiences for our clients. So it is ironic that we created friction for our own prospects trying to learn about us by gating content. So we, I guess, ate our own dog food, if you will, and made it more frictionless way to engage and learn about what we do.
So before we go a little bit farther with friction, who did you have to convince to take this more frictionless approach? And how did you kind of frame what you were going to do so that they felt comfortable or confident in, taking it X far or Z far before you said, all right, this isn't gonna work or it's successful?
Yeah. And I will preface this by saying I talked to a lot of colleagues at bigger companies, more established companies, public companies, and they don't necessarily always have that luxury because somebody above is saying we need MQLs or we need leads or we need top of funnel leads. I've heard all those. And admittedly, that's what my CEO was saying when I got hired. We need more top of funnel leads. We need top of funnel leads. So when we made this determination, we started by testing. So we didn't just do it all at once, right? We started by testing. We took our current ebook at that point. We spent 2 weeks and we then compared the numbers side by side. So as we were doing the quarter wrap up, I said, look, here's the problem. We're getting all this junk data. We're not getting enough leads. We'd like to have more leads. We went ahead and tested, and here's what that data looks like. See how we go from $200 and some down to $11. We can reach a lot more people this way. So we're going to ungate it. And that means we have to change what we report on. So going forward, I'm not going to report MQLs and I'm not going to report leads. And actually, I wouldn't say going forward. For about a quarter, we kept reporting that, but we started focusing them on pipeline. We focused them on inbound demo requests because one of the things that we saw, our inbound demo requests went up by 265% year over year. And we think ungating the content assets was a big cause of that, or a big impact on that. So we focused the exec team on my weekly reporting on how many demo requests are we getting, how many are going to proof of concept, how many are turning into pipeline, et cetera. And we focused them on back of the end, back of the funnel, or down. I keep going like this because we don't do a funnel like this. We do a football field as a funnel.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in the end zone, we focus them more toward that direction. And eventually I just quit reporting leads and nobody ever asked for it again. But I will say it took about a quarter to get that term out of their terminology, and quit asking for leads, quit asking for top of funnel leads. Because, and again, we're a small company. I had the luxury of doing that. My gosh, I keep hitting my microphone. I'm using my hands too much.
You're excited about it. You're excited about the success of it.
I'm excited about all this stuff. Yeah, anything marketing.
Well, and so, again, to your point, right, you remove some friction from it and it ended up working. What are some other areas that you believe marketers should be looking, or maybe even just low-hanging fruit of where they should be looking to remove friction? Where do they like seem to always produce a lot of friction because it's the way things are done, or because it's something that executives want to know about and the leadership team wants to know about, but really they're doing it to the detriment maybe of the results that they're trying to find in the end? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a couple other things that we've done. Being able to identify even who's engaging with our social content took the onus off of having to drive people from a social post over. Because in the old model, right, you would say, hey, we have this new ebook, click over. Or, well, why do people do XYZ? Check out our blog post. Everything would be taking you off platform. Well, we know that with LinkedIn, they de-emphasize. They don't want to take you off platform. So if you put a bunch of links out to third-party content, you don't get as many views. You get deprioritized. So we were studying all this, and this idea of zero-click content.
Yep.
Just a longer form post they can get value from and they don't have to leave. And then you can always give a link in one of the comments if they want to go check out the more of it. So that's one of the other things that we started doing, was doing more zero-click posts and social posts. And we even tried on an ebook, taking the first 3 pages and doing it as a document, attaching as a document to a LinkedIn post so they could get 3 pieces of content without ever leaving LinkedIn. And then if they want to go see the whole one, they click right over. The other interesting thing, and I'm going to diverge for a second, when we say we take them to an ungated ebook, it is true, but we put an opportunity on the ebook that says, hey, want to get a copy of this email to you? Give us your email address. And the reason for that, the logic in my mind for that was, we did a lot of advertising. We were doing a lot of advertising on Facebook, right? I get ads all the time at Facebook. I'm on Facebook at night. I don't use Facebook for work. I use it to keep up with my nieces and nephews and my daughter and, whatever else is going on, right? If it's 9:00 at night and I see an ad, and Facebook targeting is shockingly good. I get an ad for something that looks really interesting. I'm not going to read that ebook at 9:00 at night, right? When I'm kind of kicking back watching TV. But if they give me a way to get it emailed to me, I'll take a look the next day. So we did the same thing. Well, we have one form we've gotten 165 leads off. And by the way, they're all good emails because that's the whole goal, is to email the report. We can still put them then on a nurture sequence, but we make the nurture sequence additional content. We're not trying to push for a demo. We're trying to give them more content. So that's another example of that, where we took friction out of all that. Give them zero-click content, give them a couple of pages of the ebook, get them over to a, ungated ebook, but give them an option to later get it. And then if you give us the email, we're not going to hit you up for a demo, but we are going to give you more content. And we build unique sequences, nurture sequences based on the piece of content. So if they download our Black Friday thing, then we'll give them other data about Black Friday and retail. We know they're probably retail oriented. So we give them retail oriented content. If they download an ebook on content security policies, which is a much more technical term, then we'll give them a bunch of content about content security and how they look at their third-party content.
So if I pull a bit from what you're saying, and we're huge fans of zero-click content as well. This is something we're doing for clients, and it harkens back to kind of what you were even talking about on between your website and your other campaigns and everything, where you ultimately want to be aware of the engagement somebody's having with your content, with your brand and so on, but that the friction that most folks are creating or just happy with always ends up, very much so, get people to the website because that's the only place where we can get really great metrics, or that's the only place where we can sort of have our landing page to sell this particular offer and upsell somebody and retarget them in the way that we want to, or whatever the case may be. But to your point, I mean, you were talking about LinkedIn doesn't want to send somebody off every one of the social platforms unless it's a part of the way that they run, maybe like a Reddit or a Quora or something like that, where following up with additional resources is part of the game. Most of the social networks, Twitter, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're going to reward you increasing engagement on their platform. And so the more engaging you can be on their platform, the farther the reach is going to end up being. And one of the hardest parts in these platforms is, especially if you're a brand, brands don't get a lot of reach. There's not a lot of eyeballs there. Although you can follow brands, they don't tend to have the same reach as individual influencers or thought leaders, or even your sales rep who happens to be really, really engaged with his network. And so in order to get beyond the kind of four walls of however many people happen to be following your brand on any of these platforms, you need to make sure that you're publishing engaging content or engaging with folks in some way, which is not only about producing the content and publishing it, but it's also, asking questions and engaging with the folks in the comments and, all the stuff that happens with an actual social network beyond just being somebody with a megaphone to blast things. So it sounds like what you were saying is, beyond just the concept of zero-click content, always looking to draw people to your website as the end result can be, again, to your detriment, but especially on social platforms, right?
Yeah, and especially if they're deprioritizing, because what you need to get is exposure, right? You want that post to get to more people. If you do something that causes them to restrict those views, you're hurting your performance of that post. Because we get hung up on the likes and the comments, but the reality is lots of people see it that never like or comment, but the impression is being made, they're learning about your company, and they may later go check you out. So our goal is typically more views that we care about. How many people can we get in front of? And then again, we're able to track some of those metrics with Hockey Stack. The other way we took the zero-click approach was with our newsletter. And again, this is something I steal from everybody, right? So I started looking at all the newsletters I get. And the ones that I felt were most useful were long form, that were kind of zero click, where you could get, if you just read the newsletter, because I've never been a fan of newsletters, by the way. Normally that's like a bad word. Every CEO I come in, they go, we need a newsletter or a newsletter. And I'm just like, it's usually just pitching 2 or 3 things, send them over the website. Nobody cares. But what I started getting were these newsletters that were, and it's the kind of stuff that people are doing with Substack and some of those, where it's long form content. And you actually get a lot of information out of that email, and you never have to click over to something else. You may have links if you want to go deeper, you want to read a case study or something, but you don't have to get value. So we sunsetted our old newsletter, gave it a little bit of pause. We were doing that. We were spinning up our podcast. So we decided to take content from the podcast. So we take an episode, and our newsletter comes out every other week, and our podcast comes out the alternate week. So we have a topic, we have a guest do it. Then we write an article about something interesting that the guest said that also dovetails into one of our points of view. And we create that as a long form piece of content that they can read and get value from. And if they want to go further, if they want to go listen to a podcast episode, great. If they don't, that's okay. Then we took that and just repurpose it on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has newsletters too. But what's great about LinkedIn is we take the content that we put out there. We have limitations on what we could put in an email, but we don't on LinkedIn. We add in some videos, we add in some additional assets right there so they can watch video clips and all that without leaving LinkedIn. Now we go promote LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is out there promoting it. We get subscribers to our newsletter there that are probably not on our subscriber list, through HubSpot that we've got it. So that's an easy, low friction way to get your word out to all those people. You're keeping them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's going to be happy about that. So if you go promote the LinkedIn newsletter, you're gold, right? They're going to like that because you're just sending them to another LinkedIn page.
What is the most sort of shocking or surprising thing where you said, we're gonna launch this campaign, we're gonna do this activity? Maybe it was something you thought would be small, and then suddenly, bam, like something completely different happened, good or bad, but something that made you kind of pause and go, I got to learn something from this. And we might need to, either pivot or lean more heavily into it to take advantage of this. It just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Boy, I'm thinking back to my career. I go with something a little more recent. So when I came into Blue Triangle, part of it was figuring out, because we're in a very, like everybody in B2B SaaS software today, they're all crowded spaces. They all have these big players who are billion-dollar companies they're going up against. They're the little company. They're always trying to look at how they punch above their weight and how they position themselves. And that was one of the things that I had to do first, was figure out that positioning. And so I used the strategic narrative process of Andy. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to blank on his last name. The famous one on strategic narrative. He's done all the Medium posts and stuff out there. It'll come to me. If I quit trying to think of it, it'll come to me. Anyway, we went through a strategic narrative process and came up with what's that real value of somebody getting our platform, because we work alongside other platforms, et cetera. We then rebuilt our whole website, built it around that fact that a lot of what we do is almost unbelievable. People don't believe that we can actually quantify how much revenue a brand is losing because of friction on their website, and then by page, and then show them how to fix it, and then on the back end, tell them how much revenue we recaptured. And for our clients, because we're dealing with enterprise brands, we're talking about millions of dollars revenue. It's a big number, right? And people just didn't believe we could do it. So we leaned in on that. We did our whole strategic narrative, and we went out with this website. Well, after about 9 months, what we came to realize in watching our customer journeys was that we were having a higher than we hoped bounce rate. And we realized what we were talking about was a little too high level. It's not exactly why people buy our platform. So we went back and we did a whole exercise where we listened to every new business call and prospect call for 2 years and trying to get, what are they saying? How do they word it? Well, how do they think about it? Because we worded it in a certain way. We weren't hitting exactly their way. And I wish I'd had money to do focus groups. I didn't. So that wasn't an option. That would be a great thing to do, is just go out and do primary research. Didn't have that option. But I went back and did that. I interviewed all of our sellers, all of our account managers. I went through customer by customer. Why do they use this? What are the functions they use? I looked at our heat mapping to understand what functions were being used the most. And then as an executive team, we actually sat there and spent 2 days talking through this. We're our competitors, doing SWOT, doing all that stuff. Out of that came 3 key reasons, use cases why people buy us. We redid the whole website, and we actually got a great partner in that, and group called Fletch that they've done hundreds of these. They're well known in this world. Who came back, and our homepage we just launched last week could not be more different than the homepage we had out for the first year. We think that's going to be a game changer because it helps people immediately get, what do you do? Why is it unique? And how can you help me solve a problem I'm trying to solve today? As good as our messaging was before, we just hit the mark. We missed the mark, rather. We were a little too high level. We talked about it from our term. Here's how we do this uniquely, but they aren't looking for a solution to do what we do. They're looking for a solution to solve their problem. So that was a good learning exercise, and a proof that, I'm not 10 years into my career, right? I've been doing this for a number of decades. You can always learn, and sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you get it right. I think the narrative worked. It just wasn't getting the people to quickly get what we do when they came to the site. It worked great on sales calls. It was harder to get, in that cold approach. So that was and I wish I had data. We just pushed it last week, so I can't give you the data, but eventually I'll be able to tell you the data. Does that lead to more inbound demo requests? Does that lead them to go consume more content? Because with our own software, we can see customer journeys and see how many people stay and how many pages they spend on the site. So
that's awesome. I want to go back to the book. I see the book behind you. If you're watching the video, let's see the big old letters, O-N-E. Let's talk about that a little bit. You touched upon it a little bit earlier. Remind me what the book's about.
Yeah, so it's called An Audience of One, and it's about one-to-one marketing. And it really came out of, we wrote the book, and it was published by McGraw-Hill about 2 years ago. And it came out of, at the time when we started working on the book, and I say we because I have a co-author, Jamie Turner, good friend and co-author. But when we started working on the book, I was working at a company called 4Info, and we were all about digital identity and how you tie a mobile device to a person, tie your laptop to a home address. So then I could serve you targeted ads, et cetera. And in that process, we just learned so much. And I was out speaking in the industry, and we just learned all about this idea of personalized one-to-one marketing and how even consumer brands or, big scale brands could do it. And that's what the book is all about. It's about how to move from mass marketing to one-to-one marketing. So it has a bit more consumer bent, although we did an entire chapter on B2B and how, B2B SaaS companies could do it because there's methodology that applies. But it was one of those things that we started talking about. Originally, it was going to be a self-published book, and we started writing. We wrote like a couple of chapters, and Jamie said, why don't we just pitch it out to a couple of publishers? And he had done this before. He packaged it up. He sent it to 3 publishers, and we got 2 offers. So competing offers, which is amazing. So then when we had a contract from McGraw-Hill and money, then it was like, oh crap, now we actually got to finish this book. So that was the hard part. That was like 3 or 6 months of just every single night, every single weekend writing the book. It was painful. It was a lot of work, but it was fun to have after the fact.
Although it was a lot of, although you described it as painful and it was a lot of work there, what was the most maybe interesting thing that came from having to synthesize that into a book for you?
I would tell you, they don't teach this stuff in college. There aren't a lot of books on it. And so our book is now used at a number of colleges in the marketing program to teach this topic and that whole digital identity. It hasn't changed, believe it or not. I mean, we were careful that we didn't get into specific technologies because right when the book was going to publishing, Google came out about deprecating third-party cookies. Apple had just made the change. So we avoided the specifics of the technology and talked more conceptually about first-party data versus third-party, et cetera. And so it's evergreen. So it's actually taught now on several college campuses. I've actually taught some college classes as a guest lecturer, which is super fun. So that's been probably the most surprising but rewarding thing about the book.
Given the topic of the book and all of the stuff going on right now with generative AI and data and all the other things that go along with the topic of, creating marketing for that one individual, personalization, all that stuff that goes along with it. Do you feel that we're either farther than you expected since you wrote the book to kind of what a ideal situation or maybe the holy grail of what that looks like for marketers? Or do you feel like we're much closer than you expected to be back when you started the book?
I don't think so, because machine learning was already around, a lot of those principles we talked about. And really the fundamentals of one-to-one marketing haven't changed. AI allows you to do it at scale. But even in the book, we did a case study there's a platform called metadata.io. And they were doing very early, this is back when we were writing the book, and we became a customer of theirs. That's how I was aware of them. But where they would test 20 or 30 different versions of every ad. And then based on serving it up enough times, they'd see which ads were performing better than others and just automatically start turning off the ones that were performing more poorly. So you were optimizing based on those, and we could optimize toward conversion. That was all being done back when we wrote the book. So yes, has AI gotten farther along and are you able to do more things? Yes, the ability to personalize creative, because we were talking about this stuff back in my agency days. In fact, there was a book that came out called The One-to-One Future. Don Peppers and Martha Rogers wrote this book. And this was back when I worked back in the agency days. And we actually thought it was the coolest thing ever, the concepts, but it was called The One-to-One Future for a reason, because it wasn't technically possible. Just the ability to collect data and all of that. And I was working in an agency. We created a division we called One-to-One Marketing Division to go after, but we were really using a lot of very old school techniques to do that. But the concepts were already there. The ideas were there. It's just the technology has improved over time. Digital identity, the things you could do today that we couldn't do 20 years ago or couldn't do cost effectively. Because if you had to use direct mail or other, print ads and digital printing and all that, think about all the technologies involved in 20, 30 years to make that possible. And that was the other rewarding thing is Don Peppers and Martha Rogers wrote the foreword to our book, which was a great honor because I had read the book. They were like gods to me. So that was pretty cool. So anyway, I'd just say, to get back to your question, it's not surprising to me. I think what I'm learning from AI is how not to do it bad. AI just allows you to do a lot of things badly at scale. So you still need the basic principles and it goes back to, is it relevant? More than anything, is it relevant? Even all the AI email campaigns, relevancy beats personalization every day. Just does.
Well, even you said way earlier in this conversation around how AI is making it easier for folks to do the mass emails at scale or produce a lot of content. And so there's much more noise and competition, but that noise and competition is also mediocre. And so it's more challenging there used to be like, okay, there's a signal and the noise. And now the noise is that much louder and the signal has fewer sort of conduits to reach the customer because of how much of their attention is being sucked up by all of this noise, this mediocreness that's being produced by generative AI. If there was one tip that you could have for marketers, especially, in the B2B space, around kind of getting closer to that ideal one customer, approach, what would it be? What would be that first step?
Well, again, I'll go back to, and I think this is maybe what we learned in the exercises just talked about on the website. relevance is the piece I think people are missing. If you hit me, if I'm trying to solve a problem, right? So right now we're trying to figure out from our outreach efforts, because it's become so hard, because we went through that whole process. We hired a consultant. We did the whole 20 email addresses, all that stuff, so we could scale up and send out 50,000 emails. Never been a fan of it, but you know what? It got us meetings. It worked. You kind of have to join them. Well, all of our domains got blacklisted because, we have all these other domains. They all got blacklisted a month ago or 3 weeks ago, and we suddenly got shut down. Now you have to spin up new domains. And I'm just like, you know what? This is just like whack-a-mole. We're just going to keep doing it. And Google's and Microsoft's going to keep trying to find ways to shut it down. We've got to think about this differently. And again, I go back to when somebody hits me with a message about how they can solve a problem. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. So as we were thinking about this, we're thinking, okay, we've got to think about this differently. We just can't keep spinning up more email addresses and keep doing the thing. How do we become more relevant? How do we maybe focus our energy on the people best that would be the best prospects for us and engage with them? I saw a social post from a company called LetterDrop, where they had this really cool technology that allowed you to figure out who's engaging with your social posts and then be able to easily outreach to them and all this stuff. I actually demoed the software a month earlier, but they didn't show me that aspect of the platform. So I reached back out to the rep and asked for a demo because it was relevant to me at that time. And I got to see the message. So you've got to get the message in front of them some way. And there is more than just email. But even an email, I have gotten cold emails that if it solves a problem I'm trying to solve, I will respond to that. But I get thousands of emails. I get emails for HR. I get emails for cleaning supplies. I get emails for finance stuff. And I'm just like, have you seen my title? I have nothing to do with any of those things. So I think people have gotten lazy, and the AI has just allowed them to do really bad stuff at scale. And bad stuff doesn't, or wrongly targeted, unrelevant stuff doesn't, I don't care if you do 1,000 or you do 1,000,000, it's still not going to convert.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people what is the right way of saying it? It's not undervalue, but they underestimate what it means when they reach out to the wrong audience in regards to they're still human beings, and they may not be in market now. They may be in market later. They may be influential in the buying decision at that organization, but just not the right person to receive that initial message. And yet I think I've seen folks treat people as if they're just some, kind of, I don't know, piece of paper to just throw away when they're done connecting with folks. And I believe in the concept of sort of not polluting the well, so to speak, but you definitely have a bunch of human beings that at some given time, there may be an opportunity there to provide them product, or an opportunity or a service or something like that. And you ruin it by just kind of treating it as this expendable thing that just is a part of a large list that you're able to grab because AI is making it easy for you to scrape and build these big old lists of people. And it doesn't cost very much to reach out to them cold. So I like what you're saying. Before we wrap up, this is the time in the episode where I would like for you to ask me a question, anything you want, and it could be related to what it is we're talking about, except why our agency's name is Secret Sushi. I can't tell you that online recording. We can talk about it behind the scenes, but I'm not going to record it and put that out there. It's a secret. It's all right. So is there anything, that just kind of came up from this conversation, or any past conversations maybe that we've had that you could ask me a question? Sure.
So since you work with a number of clients, what is one thing you see working really well for your clients today that's getting through, that's converting into meetings?
It's similar to some of what you're talking about. It is content for sure, but content that is repurposed and disseminated through the human beings at that organization and all those touch points that they have for reaching out to people and having conversations with people, essentially being helpful to individuals and thinking about, well, what do we have within the thought leaders or the subject matter experts that we have, the champions, the people that know how to solve this particular problem. If we actually know what we're talking about, then we know how to solve these problems for folks. So how do we make ourselves more receptive or be where our audience is when they are asking questions or raising their hand to learn more about how to be better, faster, stronger, and smarter at whatever it is that they're doing. And so to your point, like LinkedIn is a huge place right now, right? And that we've seen also in Slack communities and other communities that are sort of off the grid, places where people wouldn't normally go to because they're always constantly thinking about the big social networks and the big advertising platforms, is going where the people are and then leveraging the body of content that you have in whatever shape or form, or to be honest, leveraging what you just know from stuff that's third party, content. It's helping those folks and being really personable and building a relationship in a way that doesn't always lead back to, like, I've seen some folks in Slack communities who, when somebody raises their hand and says, I have this problem and I'm looking for a recommendation. And you can always see when that comment from somebody is not turning into just recommending a solution for somebody, but let's take this offline so that I can sell you something. And that's before you build trust. That's before you build any authority around folks and confidence that, if I talk to you, I'm going to get value because I've already received a lot of value and help from these previous conversations that we've been having. So I think that's the thing we've been finding is working more and more. It can be really hard. That's why I was very interested to hear how you kind of got buy-in from folks and how you positioned it internally, because although a lot of the old ways of doing things aren't working as well as they have in the past, folks still are very resistant to the change. And also to do it in the way that I'm describing actually takes a mindset shift and some skills to understand how to just be helpful without full-blown expectation of it converting into a deal or a sale in the next 24 or 48 hours. So that's what I've been seeing be successful. And you actually, you really reminded me of it as you were talking about your focus, even around the website, on engagement over getting that conversion data, get that conversion data. And then ultimately, the zero-click content, which is we love that as well. Big proponent of things. It's actually hard just to get a writer who's used to doing marketing writing to think about how to create content to help the organization or SDRs to jump in and speak in a way that's just plain helpful. Let's stop trying to always say how cool we are. Let's just build relationships, build trust, help folks. And there is a way to map that narrative back to your service or product. You said the same thing, right? On your website, you said the same thing around, I think your podcast and so on. And there is an art to doing that, and it pays off, I think, in the long run in spades when you get people that are coming to you inbound and people that are already like, I've come to you because I believe, or I already know that you all have the solution to the problem that I have. And they've selected you without going out and finding a short list of, half dozen other folks where they're looking at all the demos with everybody and have no actual connection with those individuals.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I had an old colleague, Mary Tangradi, one of my favorite people ever, who had a line that I use all the time. Life is long, right? If you don't think in terms of the transactional nature, and I've got to get the meeting next week, but I'm building a relationship with somebody, I'm proving value and being helpful to them down the road when they are in a position to do business with me, they're more likely to select me. But if I don't have to think about getting that meeting next week, and then if I don't get it, I move on and I never talk to them again. The best people in business I've known, even the best SDRs, are people who can maintain relationships and build them over a long period of time with the prospect, because people aren't always in market ready to buy when we reach out to them.
Absolutely. But when they are, they're immediately going into their brain and saying, who should I talk to, right? Who comes to mind?
They have 3 companies in mind that they've been out there. They've been listening to podcasts. They've been consuming their content, downloading their reports. And by gosh, when I get that budget, that's one of the 3 I'm calling.
Chuck, I learned so much from this conversation, and I thank you for joining me. Where should people connect with you if they want to find out more? And remind us of the name of the podcast and the book as well.
Sure. So, LinkedIn, I'm on all the time. So Chuck Moxley, pretty easy, and happy to connect with people there and be of help in any way I can. The book, An Audience of One, it's available on Amazon or wherever you buy books. And the podcast is called The Frictionless Experience. So you can learn more at thefrictionlessexperience.com, or it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and whatever. And be sure to subscribe. And hopefully if it's a topic that makes sense to you, we do mostly interviews. So we're interviewing like head of e-commerce or e-commerce experiences at Walmart and companies like that. So we try to get some pretty interesting guests, and it's all educational content.
That's awesome. Chuck, thanks again for joining me, and good luck to you out there in Arizona. I'm feeling the heat here. I don't know if you can see it. I'm sweating over here in my office, and I think the air conditioning finally went on at now it's 4:00 in the afternoon for me. So keep cool out there in Arizona.
Thanks, Adam. It's been a pleasure.